guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Club Grayskull Filmation Sorceress action figure from Super 7. That is right, my friends. Brand new for the Filmation assortment. Based on the original cartoon series, we've got a brand new version of the Sorceress, who, as you can see, comes in that standard Club Grayskull packaging, which is very nice because it has the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe logo on the back, a great Castle Grayskull motif, which actually is a slipcover. So when we remove that, we've got a full window box right here in the jaw bridge of Castle Grayskull, showing off our action figure within. And there's actually a lot going on inside this packaging, because not only do we have a brand new version of the Filmation Sorceress there, but we've also got an alternate head, which works as a different character. If you've seen the episode Origin of the Sorceress from the Filmation cartoon series, this is Kodak Ungol, which is the original sorceress that bestowed the sorceress powers onto Tila Na here. So that's pretty cool, which also means a lot of people are probably gonna want two of these so you can have two different characters there. We've also got a new version of Zohar, or Sorceress as the Falcon from the cartoon. You can see a perch and her cape back there. So there is a lot going on inside this box here. And when we flip it around to the back, we've got some nice artwork of the Sorceress there standing in front of Castle Grayskull, and on the bottom, we've got a brand new bio for the character. So let's go ahead and get the Sorceress pulled out of this box and get a closer look at her. Alright, so we've got our Sorceress outside of the packaging. So first things first, I want to bring the tape measure in here so you guys can see that she stands right at about 6.5 inches tall. The only reason I bring that up is because most of the Classics figures stand right at around 7 inches tall. Sorceress is noticeably shorter than a lot of the other figures, so they're definitely using that smaller stature for the female buck here, which is probably a good thing, but it is really noticeable even when standing her alongside the Classics version of Sorceress, so you'll see that when we get to the comparison time portion later on. Otherwise, the overall sculpt is really nice here. The colors are bright and vibrant. They're very cleanly painted on this particular figure. And we've got a great overall look of the Filmation cartoon series. The eyes, I don't know. On mine, it does look like the pupil on the left eye is a little off-center. You can see, I don't know, the eyes look like they're painted just a little off. You can really notice it when you're looking at her straight on, but of course you don't really notice it as much when you're looking at her from the side. Now, of course, that could just be with my particular Sorceress. It's just something that I really noticed when I was messing around with the figure here. It almost looks like it's just painted a little off from the sculpt. You can see kind of the sculpt of the eye underneath the actual paint of the eye there, so it just unfortunately didn't line up straight on my figure, but hopefully that's not a across the board issue. It happens sometimes. It's a bit of a bummer though. So one of the things I want to point out is the way that the Sorceress's cape was handled, because with the Sorceress, of course, her feathered cape is always attached to her arms. That's how it is in the animated series, and of course all of the versions of the toy of the Sorceress that came out before her had sort of like an action feature where you spread her arms and the cape would come up with it. Vintage figure, the Classics figure, etc. This time around, they chose to address this with an interchangeable cape. So this right here is the first cape. And you can see this is all just one solid piece, and it's got 3 pegs. It's got a peg up here that plugs into the back, and then 2 pegs down here that plug into the back of the arms. You can see all of those pegs there. And you can see it actually looks really nice. So this is the folded down version here, you know, and it's all solid orange on the inside. It's got the blue on the outside, so that's accurate. That looks really nice. And then you could plug this into her hands here. You do have to get her in the right pose, otherwise obviously they're not going to match up, but you can see it plugs in nice and tight. The only issue, of course, is that means her arms have to stay down at her side. Now you could pose her, you know, with her arm up if you want, but of course you're going to have that detached wing, so it's always a bit tricky with the Sorceress trying to capture that look, you know, without doing like a cloth cape where there's straps attached to her arms. This is pretty much, I think, the best we're going to get, and this looks fine. If you're just going to pose her standing on the shelf, you're not going to be able to really pose the arms. They're going to be attached down to her sides there, but it does look pretty good. So the second version of the cape is the iconic wings spread pose. Of course, the sorceress, you know, even with the classic toy, she had her arms out to her side with her cape spread out just like this. So if you want to swap that off, it's just as easy, of course, as popping that off the peg. This one also has 3 pegs, but you'll have to line her arms up out to the sides here to match the peg holes with the pegs on the cape. But it's pretty easy there, just like that. And then the wrists have the ability to articulate up and down there. You know, you got the nice hinge joints, so that way you can get her hands posed appropriately. And there we go. Now we've got her posed with her arms out to her side and her cape open. Like I said, it looks good. It just really hinders the movements on this figure. But if you're just going to put her up on the shelf to display her in a pose, this actually does look really good. And it's kind of nice not having the broken up pieces that was kind of on that weird hinged articulated cape we saw in classics. There's no big drums on her back for the articulation points. The cape is nice and clean and open and looks really, really nice. One of the other things I want to point out, something strange with my sorceress, you'll notice down here, her left ankle, or the bottom portion of her foot, is warped. Do you see that? Do you see how warped that plastic is? This has kind of caused me some issues with keeping her standing up straight, because that leg is totally curled inwards like that. So I almost have to like offset her feet a little bit just to get her standing up. I kind of wish I could get her legs a little closer together, because she should have like more of these closer together legs for this particular pose here. But yeah, with that warped boot down there, that definitely causes a few issues with displaying the figure upright. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the articulation here. And of course, we're going to remove the cape, because in order to really properly move her arms around, she can't actually be attached to those capes. So she does have the ball jointed head. The head can look left and right, move slightly up and down. You can see that the lower portions of her headdress are made of a very soft, pliable plastic, which is good, because that way it does not hinder the articulation whatsoever. She's got those standard ball-like joints at the shoulder, so the arms can go outwards, forwards, and backwards. Swivels at the elbow, bends at the elbow, swivels at the wrist, and the hinge joints at the wrist there. She's got that nice ball-like joint at the torso, so you can rotate the body all the way around, kind of rock it around there. She's got the hinge-like joints at the thighs. Legs can go outwards, forwards, backwards. You can see, again, her dress is made of that same softer, pliable plastic, just like the headdress was there. The knees are very tight on this figure, which is really good. You got swivels at the boot cut, and then the ankles can move up and down at the hinge, as well as rock side to side. So, articulation is very nice. It's right on par with all the other figures. With her, though, you only run into that issue with the cape there, of course, hindering the articulation. So one of the accessories is an interchangeable head, which is a different character. This, of course, is Koduk Ungol, which is the original sorceress, or at least the sorceress before the current sorceress. This was from the episode Origin of the Sorceress from the Filmation cartoon series, where we got to meet this character as she basically passed on the sorceress role to Tila Na, which is the current sorceress there. So it's a really nice head sculpt. You can see it just matches up. Obviously, the costume and everything is exactly the same, with the only difference being the design of the headdress. She's got kind of like these blue feathers coming off the side of the beak there instead of the orange design. And of course, the face sculpt is a little different. She's got a bit of an older look to her face there. Does almost kind of have the same thing going on with the paint of the eye on the left there. So now I am a little curious if this is more widespread. You can actually see the sculpt of the eye underneath and how it's a little off a little bit. But yeah, looking at these two heads side by side, you can see how different they are. Maybe at first glance it's not super noticeable, but when you look at them side by side, you can tell that they are definitely meant to be two different characters. So I would imagine a lot of fans bought two of this figure so they could display the two different sorceresses on their shelf. And lastly, the other accessory is this brand new version of Zohar. Of course, in the Filmation series, Sorceress turned into the orange bird, so this is her in her bird form. It comes with this perch with these little pegs. I will say that the pegs are a bit tough to plug into the feet of Zohar, at least the first time. You're gonna have to work him in there just a little bit, but it's a brand new sculpt, solid sculpt there, so there's no articulated wings or anything like that, but it's a really fantastic little piece. I love getting a more Filmation accurate version of this bird here. Very cool stuff. Alright guys, it's comparison time. So here is a look at this brand new Filmation version of the Sorceress, standing alongside that Masters of the Universe Classics version, which, as you can see, quite a bit different. Of course, you could really see the difference in the cape there, because it had the articulated wings that kind of folded outwards when you moved her arms outwards, but also you could really see that height difference there as well. So you could really tell the difference. It's almost like at first glance, you don't notice how much different these two are until you see them side by side. And I think that this new version does a really great job of capturing the animated likeness of the Sorceress. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the brand new Filmation version of the Sorceress. All in all, I do think this is a very nice figure. I did run into some weird QC issues with my particular figure, with the warped boot and the uneven eyes kind of painted on both heads there, but otherwise I think it's a pretty solid figure regardless. The cape is interesting. You're always stuck trying to figure out how to work Sorceress's cape, and honestly I think this was handled pretty well. We could still pull off two pretty iconic poses for the way the Sorceress appeared in the animated series. Yes, it's going to hinder the articulation a bit, and yes, they do kind of pop out of those sockets there just a little easy, but it does still look really nice, especially when you've got it displayed on your shelf with the kind of wing spread pose. I think that does look very nice, and all in all, really nicely sculpted action figure. So this figure was available by pre-order only, so at this point if you're wanting to pick it up, the only chance to get it is if you find it on the secondary market. Otherwise, I would stay tuned to Super7.com for information on future Masters of the Universe releases. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know if you've got the same weird issues with your Sorceress, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, my friends.